The ship hit the ground hard. Smoke filled the air as the escape pod rolled over rocky land. Ray coughed and held his side, feeling something sharp digging into his ribs. He was lucky to survive the crash, but his body ached and his head throbbed. Like a beating drum, the planet was dry, red, and silent, with strange stone towers rising from the ground like teeth. His mission was simple: to explore the new system and scan life, but something had gone wrong. Something had hit his ship, something fast and silent, and now he was stranded on an unknown world. Ray grabbed a small scanner from the wreck and checked for danger. The screen blinked green: no movement nearby, no heat signatures, no life. But then he saw it, just behind the broken pod, near a group of tall rocks. Something moved. It wasn't big, but it was fast, and it didn't show up on the scanner. Ray narrowed his eyes and took slow steps toward the rocks. He gripped a small shock blade in his hand, just in case, as he reached the edge of the stones. He saw her. She stood there, half hidden by shadow. Her skin shimmered like liquid silver, and her eyes were large, glowing faint blue. She wasn't human. But she didn't look dangerous. She was young, small, and wore no armor or clothes. Just soft scales that moved like cloth. Ray took a step back, heart racing, but she didn't move. Then slowly she tilted her head. Copying his movement, he raised one hand, showing he meant no harm, and she did the same. Ray was stunned. She was smart, maybe even more than she looked. He pulled a protein bar from his pocket and tossed it gently to the ground between them. She sniffed it, then picked it up and nibbled like a curious animal. After a few bites, she looked at him and smiled just a little. It wasn't a threatening smile, more like a child discovering something new. Ray chuckled under his breath, the tension fading just a bit. He pointed at himself. "Ray," he said clearly. She blinked, then touched her chest and made a sound like Vorar. He wasn't sure if it was her name or her species, but he nodded. "Nice to meet you." "Vora," he said. She walked closer, slow and careful, and stood beside his broken pod. Her eyes studied everything, as if she'd never seen a human ship before. Then she dropped to her knees and began drawing in the dirt. Ray leaned over and saw symbols, circles, lines, strange shape that looked like a heart, but with 3 chambers. She pointed at it, then at herself, then back at him. Ray frowned, trying to understand. "What is that?" He whispered. She tapped the 3rd chamber again, and then looked deep into his eyes. There was something serious in her face now, something ancient. Suddenly, the scanner beeped. Ray looked down, still nothing on the radar, but the device glitched and flickered like it was being jammed. When he looked up again, Vora was gone. He turned in a full circle, breathing fast, confused. Then he heard something soft breathing just outside the tent flap he had set up near the pod. He stepped outside, and there she was, curled on the ground beside the tent like a sleeping animal, her 3-part tail wrapped around her body, moving gently like it had a mind of its own. Ray stared, his heart beating faster. She wasn't just curious, she was staying. But why? And what did that symbol mean, the 3rd chamber? The triple part in her heart? Or something else? He didn't know yet, but one thing was clear. He wasn't alone on this planet anymore. And whatever Vora was, she had chosen to stay near him. The wind blew softly across the rocks as the 2 strange lives shared the silence. Ray sat down near her, watching her sleep, while the stars above blinked cold and bright. Far in the distance, something howled. Ray didn't move. Vora's tail twitched, but she didn't wake. Whatever was out there, she wasn't afraid. And maybe, for the first time, neither was he. Ray woke up to a strange scratching sound near his broken pod. He sat up fast, heart pounding, hand reaching for his blade. But when he stepped out of the tent, it wasn't danger he saw. It was her again, Vora. The alien girl with the glowing eyes and silver skin. She was crouched beside the ship, her fingers gently tracing the control panel like she had seen it before. He stared in disbelief, the scanner in his hand blinking red with errors. She wasn't just touching the ship, she was doing something to it. Something that made the power flicker inside. Ray walked slowly toward her, speaking low. "Hey, stop. That's dangerous." Vora turned her head, eyes calm, and moved back like a child caught sneaking candy. Ray stepped closer and caught her wrist without thinking, the moment his skin touched hers. A jolt went through his arm. Her skin wasn't cold or soft. Felt like warm glass, smooth but alive. He pulled his hand away quickly. Startled, Vora didn't flinch. She only watched him with those glowing eyes, full of something unreadable. She stood and began to walk away, her tail moving behind her in 3 perfect, separate lines. Ray froze, mouth slightly open. It wasn't one tail, it was 3. They moved like snakes, but not wild, not random. Each tail curved smoothly around obstacles, like they could see, like they could think. He had seen alien species before, but nothing like this. He grabbed his log recorder and started speaking into it. Day 2. Contact still peaceful. Alien female. Shows understanding of ship tech. Body remains unknown species. Tail appears. Multiple. Vora turned around suddenly and stared at him. Ray stopped recording, feeling guilty like he had done something wrong. But she didn't attack, didn't even look angry. She just walked to a flat rock and sat down, pulling a stick. From the dirt, she began to draw again, and Ray stepped closer to see. This time she didn't sketch a heart. She drew a full body, hers. May beyond, added the 3 tails. Then she drew something on the back. Small glowing spot, and under it, 3 circles connected by lines. Ray couldn't understand it all. But one thing was clear, she was trying to tell him something. Something important about her body. He leaned down and said, "What are these?" Pointing to the 3 circles, Vora tapped the middle one, then pointed at him, then at herself, then drew a symbol that looked almost like a warning sign. It made his stomach twist. Was it dangerous? Was she dangerous? Or was she warning him about something else? Before he could ask more, the wind changed, and a sharp smell hit his nose. It smelled like acid and meat. Vora's eyes narrowed, her tails rising slowly behind her like they were ready to strike. She grabbed his arm and pulled him down low behind a rock. Ray's heart raced as they crouched together, listening. A shadow passed over them. Something big flying overhead, fast and silent. Ray peeked up and saw a sleek black drone scanning the ground, then flying off again. Vora didn't move until it was gone. When she stood, she looked shaken but strong. Ray asked softly, "Are they looking for you?" She didn't answer, but the way she looked at the sky told him everything. She wasn't just lost, she was hunted. That night, Ray sat inside the tent, staring at the scanner screen that kept glitching every few minutes. Vora sat outside again, her glowing skin lit by moonlight, her tail slowly coiling and uncoiling beside her. She looked calm, like she had done this before, like danger was normal to her. Ray whispered into his log recorder, "I think she's not just alien. She's engineered, built for something. Maybe survival, maybe war, maybe worse." He shut the recorder and looked out at her. She wasn't just different, she was special, and something deep inside him felt drawn to that difference. But still, one question burned in his mind. What was the third thing? And why did she keep drawing it like it meant life or death? The scream that tore from Ray's mouth didn't sound human. He had stepped into something sharp. No. A nest of thorn beasts hidden under a soft layer of red sand. Tiny, spiked creatures shot out from the ground, their tails stabbing. His legs with needle tips, he kicked and ran, but the poison was already spreading. Thick and burning, Ray collapsed beside the broken escape pod. vision blurring, breath coming in gasps. He reached for the medkit, but dropped it, fingers no longer working right. The world tilted, and the sky spun like water in a sink. Then she appeared, glowing in the sunlight, eyes wide with alarm. She dropped to her knees and looked at his leg, where the skin had turned purple and green. She didn't panic, didn't scream. She bit her own hand. Ray blinked, unable to speak. As blue blood ran from her palm, thick and glowing like liquid stars. She pressed it against his wound, and the skin hissed, steam rising. He cried out again, but then silence. The pain stopped, just like that. He could feel his heart slowing, his muscles relaxing, like ice melting in warm hands, and then the dreams began. Ray's eyes closed, but his mind didn't rest. He saw things, strange images flooding in fast. A room full of bright lights and metal tables, Vora smaller. Younger strapped down while alien and human figures argued nearby. Machines scanned her, needles poked her. Her tails twitched in pain. He saw flashes of her running through corridors, hiding in crates, climbing cold mountains alone. And always, always, the symbol 3 circles, one glowing, one dim, one pulsing. Ray woke with a loud gasp, air flooding back into his lungs. The sky was dark now, and a soft wind blew across his skin. Vora sat nearby, knees pulled to her chest. Her glowing hand now healed, her face calm but tired. Ray looked at his leg. Where the wound had been clean smooth, not even a scar. "What did you do to me?" he asked, voice shaking. She turned her head slightly but said nothing. Instead, she dragged her finger through the dirt and redrew the same symbol from his dreams, 3 circles. But this time the third glowed brighter than the others. Ray sat up. Slowly, his body still weak but alive. He remembered the dream so clearly. It wasn't just a dream. It was her. She had shown him her memories, her pain, her escape. And that third part of her, Hit, wasn't just a body part. It was something living, something that connected. She crawled closer, watching him with deep, thoughtful eyes. Then she whispered a word, her voice shaky and soft like wind through grass. "Vorak," she said again. This time, placing her hand over her chest, he repeated it back, and she smiled, just a little. He didn't know if it was her name, her species, or something sacred, but it meant something powerful. She pointed at his chest now, right above his heart. And then back at her 3-part tail. He nodded slowly, beginning to understand her kind weren't like other aliens. They were created or changed for something deeper, maybe even for humans. Ray watched as she lay down beside the fire pit, her tails wrapping around her like a blanket. He didn't know what would happen tomorrow or who was still hunting her, but one thing had changed forever. They were bonded now, not just in survival, but in something stranger, something ancient. He closed his eyes and whispered into the night. "Whatever you are, Vora, I think you just saved more than my life." And far above them, something moved. In the stars, circling, waiting, but for now, on the ground. It was just the human and the girl with the third unknown thing. The wind stopped without warning. Not a single breeze, not a sound from the trees. Not even the chirp of those tiny glowing insects that danced in the evenings. Ray stepped out of the tent, blinking at the sudden silence. Even Vora, who usually curled up beside the fire pit or sketched in the dirt with her glowing finger, was standing completely still. She was staring up at the sky, her mouth slightly open, her tails rising slowly like they were sensing something before he could. Ray followed her gaze and saw it too. A shadow was moving above the clouds, not a bird. Not a cloud ship, but something too quiet, too smooth, and too black. The scanner in his hand shook slightly, then died completely. The screen turned to static. And every tool on his belt started giving off tiny beeps and glitched sounds. "Vora." Ray whispered, not sure if she'd answer. "What is that?" She didn't speak, but her eyes were wide. And fear was written on her glowing face. He had never seen her like this before, not even when poisoned, not even when hunted by beasts. She reached down and began digging in the dirt fast, throwing sand with both hands until she pulled something out, a small, flat disc made of a dark metal he didn't recognize. She pressed it into his palm and motioned sharply, hide. Ray didn't ask questions, he just obeyed. He crawled into the rocky split near the camp, where they stored broken tools and food packs. Vora didn't follow. She stayed out, staring into the sky like she was daring the ship to see her. Then, the black vessel dropped through the clouds, silent as death. It had no lights, no markings. Just a long black surface that shimmered like oil from its underbelly. 4 drones descended, spinning slowly, their blue beams sweeping the ground. Ray held his breath, heart pounding so loud he thought the machines might hear it. One of the drones hovered above the tent, scanning it, then moved toward the shipwreck. Another flew toward the rocks. The same rocks where Vora had stood, frozen moments ago, but she was gone. Just like before, like a whisper, she had vanished again. But Ray wasn't the only one watching. A voice echoed through the air from the drone nearest the tent, flat and cold. Life form detected earlier. Species, unknown female, code T3. Asset must be retrieved. Ray felt a chill run down his back. T3. He'd heard that in the dream, the project, the symbol, the third part. He covered his mouth and stayed low as the drones searched the area. One of them hovered above the rocks near him, paused, then made a strange clicking sound. Something was found, a strand, glowing softly in the dust, a piece of Vora's tail. The drone sucked it up with a hiss and flew higher, transmitting something to the ship above. Ray wanted to run, to do something, but he knew he'd be caught. Suddenly, a loud bang rang out from deeper in the cliffs. A flare burst into the air, red and bright and wild. The drones turned, scanning that direction, and 2 of them sped away fast. Ray crawled out and looked toward the hills. There, standing on top of a stone arch, was Vora, holding a flare launcher she had stolen from his crash kit. She fired a second one into the air as the drones flew toward her, and then she leaped down behind the ridge, disappearing again. Ray couldn't believe what he was seeing. She had drawn them away on purpose to protect him. He grabbed his bag, slung it over his shoulder, and ran. His heart was screaming inside his chest, but his feet didn't stop. He didn't care about the danger anymore. He had to find her. She had saved him more than once. Now it was his turn. As he sprinted into the shadows of the canyons, the red flare behind him still burning in the sky, one thing was clear: Vora was being hunted not just by machines, but by something bigger, something that once owned her, maybe even created her, and now they wanted her back. But Ray had made his choice. He was not letting her go without a fight. Not this time. Not ever. The walls were alive with whispers, but there was no one there. Ray stood in the ruins Vora had led him to, breathing hard, his hands on his knees, sweat dripping from his neck. They had escaped the drones for now, but she hadn't spoken a word since they entered the ancient stone hall. The place was hidden beneath the red cliffs, carved into the rock itself, sealed behind a false wall only she knew how to open. Symbols covered every inch of the chamber, glowing faintly in the dark, moving like slow waves in water. Ray stared at the symbols, heart racing, because they weren't alien, not fully. Some of them were in old Earth science code, the kind used in classified biolabs before the war. He stepped closer to a curved wall and reached out, fingers brushing against the glassy surface. The symbols reacted instantly, lighting up, spinning, and rearranging themselves into a message. Project T3. Biotech Trial. Hybrid Integration. Ray's breath caught in his throat. Vora watched him silently, standing in the shadows with her tails curled close to her body. She looked smaller now, younger. As if coming here drained her, he turned to her, voice shaking. "You're not just a species, are you?" She didn't answer, but walked toward a round console and touched it with both hands. A soft humming filled the room, and a hologram appeared flickering, old and broken, but clear enough to see. A man in a lab coat stood in the projection. His voice, distant and faded. Subject V, third phase complete. Integration of synthetic neural links successful. Emotional imprint not yet tested. Core chamber remains unstable. Vora stared at the image, then looked away, her eyes dimming. Ray understood more than he wanted to. She wasn't born like this. She was made. The third part in her anatomy wasn't just physical. It was something deeper, an emotional core. Something designed to bond, maybe even with humans. Is that what? The third thing is, Ray whispered, a part of you that connects to someone. Vora nodded once, slowly, and walked toward him. She pressed her glowing hand against his chest, above his heart, then tapped the air between them. He could feel it like static, like a pulse between two magnets trying to pull closer. Her tails lifted gently. Not in defense, but in softness, wrapping around her like a hug. Ray didn't know what to say. He felt something real, something powerful, but he didn't understand it yet. Before he could speak, the chamber lights flickered. Vora looked up sharply, her tails tightening. The black ship was near again, and the ruins had sensors too old to block it. Ray grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the back exit, deeper into the stone tunnels. They ran down narrow halls filled with dust and silence, their footsteps echoing through ancient technology and forgotten science. At the end of the tunnel, a door stood sealed with handprint locks. Vora stepped forward, pressed all three tails into the stone one by one, and the door hissed open. Inside was a control room, filled with glass chambers and dead monitors. In the middle, one chamber still glowed blue. And inside, it was another one like her, floating, asleep, younger, untouched. Ray stared, stunned. "There's more of you," Vora walked to the chamber and touched the glass, but didn't open it. She turned to Ray and shook her head, then pointed to herself, then to him, and finally placed her palm over her third tail. He understood the message. This one is not ready. But I am. The third part of her glowed faintly now, like a soft fire lighting inside her. Ray stepped forward, voice low. "They created you to bond with someone, right?" "For survival, for loyalty," she nodded, eyes locked on his. He didn't know what he felt exactly, but it was strong, real, and dangerous. Before he could say more, a loud thump hit the ceiling above. The ship had found the ruins. Dust rained down from the stone, and the walls trembled slightly. Ray looked at her. "What do we do now?" She looked up calmly and said in a soft, steady voice, "Fight." And this time, she meant it. The first drone never saw the blade coming. 1 second, it hovered silently above the ruins, scanning the crumbling stone with blue light. And the next, it dropped, split clean through the center. Ray couldn't believe what he'd just seen. Vora stood over the wreckage. Her three tails, no longer soft or elegant, but long, sharp, and glowing with pulsing energy, they had changed. Shape tail had opened into blade-like forms, edged with light, moving as if they had their own will. She wasn't running anymore. She was fighting. The sky above them roared as the black ship began to descend, sending down more drones, more machines with claws and beams and tracking systems. Ray ducked behind a stone pillar as one of them shot a beam that cracked the wall where his head had been a second before. Vora moved like wind, smooth and wild, her tail slicing through the air, hitting drone after drone, dodging blasts, deflecting them with spins and arcs that didn't seem possible. Ray grabbed a broken energy pack from the ruins and threw it at a drone, shooting it mid-air with his sidearm, exploding it in a blast of sparks. They were fighting side by side now, human and hybrid, against machines that didn't stop. Didn't think, didn't feel. Ray looked at her through the smoke and chaos. This wasn't just survival for her anymore. She was defending him. One drone got too close and slashed across Ray's arm. Cutting deep, he cried out and fell back, blood soaking through his shirt. Before the drone could land a second hit, Vora lunged from behind and stabbed it through the core, her blade tail twisting until it broke apart. She knelt beside him quickly, pressed a glowing hand to his wound, and for a brief second he felt that same warmth again, that same blue energy crawling into his skin. But this time, she looked weaker after using it. Her body trembling, Ray grabbed her shoulder. "Don't save your strength." "I'm okay." She didn't argue, just nodded and stood, facing the last of the machines. The ship above rumbled louder. It was preparing something bigger. Something. Final Ray's scanner suddenly blinked red, warning symbols flashing all over the screen. "Orbital charge incoming," he muttered, eyes wide. "They're going to wipe the entire ruin." Vora looked up calmly.
Oh.
Then pointed to the inner chamber, the hidden control room they'd escaped from. Ray understood. "You want to overload the old core." She nodded once, her tails still glowing, still shaped like weapons. Together, they ran back into the ruins. Passing burning metal and sparking drone pieces, inside, the sleeping chamber still glowed. And Vora moved quickly to the main console. Ray pulled open the access panel and began rerouting wires while she plunged one of her blade tails into the center of the core. The system reacted instantly, lights flashing, alarms buzzing in a language neither of them could read. Ray glanced at her. "This will blow everything, including you." She looked at him with quiet eyes, then reached out, touched his face, and for the first time, she smiled, truly smiled. "I choose," she whispered softly, the words trembling. But clear. Ray froze, heart pounding, because he knew what she meant. She had bonded completely. Finally, deeply, and now she was ready to sacrifice herself for him. But he wasn't going to let that happen. Ray yanked the final cable, redirected power to the side corridor, and hit the old emergency release. A hidden tunnel burst open behind them. Light pouring through, he grabbed her hand. "We're not dying today." She didn't resist, just followed. As they ran into the tunnel, the energy core behind them glowing brighter, hotter, rising to overload as they reached the end. The world behind them exploded. Fire and stone and light filled the ruins, swallowing the black ship and everything. In its path, the tunnel shook. Debris fell, but they kept moving. By the time they reached the open ridge on the far side of the mountain, the sky behind them was filled with smoke and fire. They collapsed on the edge, breathing hard, bodies aching. Ray turned to look at her, her tails slowly changing back to their gentle form. Her face, tired but alive. She looked at him and whispered, "I chose you." He didn't have words to reply. He just reached out, took her hand, and held it tight as the sun began to rise over the wreckage of everything they'd survived. The sun didn't feel real anymore, after the fire, after the battle. After the ruins fell behind them, Ray and Vora sat in silence at the edge of a cliff. The sky was turning gold. The clouds soft and wide, like feathers stretching across the horizon. Ray held a cloth to his side, where blood still oozed. Not enough to kill him, but enough to slow him. Vora sat beside him, with her eyes half closed, her body glowing only faintly now, her tails resting in the sand like quiet rivers. Neither of them spoke, but everything had already been said in the way they had run, fought, bled, and survived. Together, Ray finally looked at her and asked softly, "What happens now?" Vora didn't answer right away. Instead, she took his hand and placed it over the side of her neck, just above a faint glowing line. He felt a soft rhythm under his palm knot. A heartbeat? Not quite, but something like it. It pulsed slowly, in threes. Then she whispered, "Third heart. It beats only when I choose." Ray didn't move, just listened. Her voice was quiet, softer than the wind. But every word felt heavy like a star. "I was not made to live alone," she said. "They built me for war, for loyalty, for survival. But my third heart, it waits for a bond." Ray felt his chest tighten. He understood now why she had stayed close, why she'd risked herself, why she saved him over and over again. The third part of her anatomy wasn't some strange tail or secret organ. It was a choice, a commitment so deep it could not be reversed. "I am yours, if you'll have me," she whispered, eyes locked with his. Ray looked down, breath shaking, in another world, in another time. He might have laughed at the idea, but not now. Now, after all they'd seen, after what she'd done, he felt the pull too. He didn't say yes with words. Instead, he leaned forward and pressed his forehead to hers. Gently, slowly. Her tails wrapped around his back, not to bind, but to hold, to promise. Time passed, maybe minutes, maybe hours, but neither of them cared when the silence finally broke. It wasn't with words, it was with a sound in the distance, crackling. Static. A signal Ray's communicator buzzed for the first time in days. "Command to Surveyor 1. Do you copy? We've tracked your emergency beacon." He looked at her, unsure if he answered. They'd find him. If he didn't, they'd be alone, completely. Forever. Vora touched the device and nodded. "It's okay," she said softly. "Let them come." Ray replied, "This is Surveyor 1. I'm alive, but I'm not alone." Hours later, the retrieval craft landed, silent and smooth. Soldiers stepped out, weapons lowered. Medics rushing forward. They paused when they saw Vora, unsure what she was, unsure what she meant. Ray stood in front of her, hands raised. "She's not a threat," he said firmly. "She's with me." The medics hesitated, then nodded. Vora didn't speak again, but her eyes never left his face. Even as they lifted him onto the stretcher, even as the ship doors closed behind them. She sat quietly beside him, her tail curled around his arm like a quiet promise. Later, in the recovery bay, as the Earth drew closer in the distance, Ray turned to her and smiled. "You left me speechless the first day we met." He said, "Still do." Vora smiled back, and for a moment her third heart glowed so bright, even the machines around them paused for a second, and somewhere deep inside her, something ancient, something warm, finally felt at peace.